Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Weatherbrains episode number 712, I do believe. This is for Monday, September 9th. And as you can see, we are in a different setting this evening. We are in Huntsville, Alabama, at the National Weather Association annual meeting. And I'm going to be in the process of setting up cameras here. You can see Troy.
Good evening, everyone.
And we're going to get our second camera set up here in just a second. This is where we share humorous anecdotes, boring personal stories, say outrageous things. This whole show will probably be an outrageous thing tonight. So
we got 14 lawyers over there. So
what I'm going to do is invite myself to join so I can set up our wide cameras. So once we get our wide camera established, everybody will be on camera here. Actually, the wide camera is the interview set camera for Dr. John and our guest here.
This is calling. He should be an engineer.
Yeah, he is an engineer. Yeah, exactly.
I am trying to learn this here. And I do need to do a couple of things really quick. I've got to get this on our
Kevin's
live.bigbrains.media.com. These are things I'm normally doing in my little quiet office, but again, we are at the Von Braun Center in Huntsville, and that's the situation here this evening. So give me 1 second to get the right link up, because a lot of people watch at live.bigbrainsmedia.com. And so I'm in the process of putting that link up now. I'm going to copy the embed code, and we are going to paste that in.
Can we look up the definition?
So the idea is that John is the interviewer. You will have this mic goes to somebody else.
So this is the guest seat?
No, the guest seat is over there. We really need to get one person in right here.
Why'd you cut it?
Oh man!
Wow,
we need that.
That's horrifying.
It's like game day.
So, don't even ask what we're doing if you're watching here. So let me invite myself.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So again, what's going to happen? Another regular needs to sit here with this mic.
Audrey's here. I know that.
We got Rick here. Yeah.
Put Bruce Thomas in here.
No, we got Rick. Rick, sit down here, man.
Rick, sit down, man. Come on in here.
Come on, you're in the family, please.
What are you doing, Rick? You're only part of this motley.
Yeah, I'm about to say.
So your job is to.
We brought the Weatherbrains 14 attorneys with us, and they're over there. So we're good.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
There's a 5-second delay.
There's a couple for me. Now this is like a pathway to unemployment right here.
By the way, we are live. So y'all entertain our audience while I'm setting this thing up here real quick.
Which audience, Scott?
Hope everyone can see James' picture on the wall here.
They can basically see.
Oh, we have to get the wide camera view.
Yeah, the wide camera's not set up.
I'll hide behind
The one on the camera tripod. Oh, the garbage can.
I want that.
Did you check this mic? Is this functional?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Right.
What's the official name for this right here? A spit filter? Or what is it?
Lower.
What is that?
I'm good.
Something to make an Enterprise Alabama.
Black circle thing. That has a name though. Pop filter.
Not pop filter.
Yeah. Okay.
The audio guy that gave me the mic said you need a pop filter on that mic. It's very
sensitive.
Poppity.
We are live.
Are we on?
We are not we're not recording the actual podcast.
No more ugly words.
Troy Kimmel. Good to see you.
You don't know Dr. Lawrence?
What?
You don't know Dr. Lawrence?
Of course I know Dr. Moore. That's why I was saying, just saying hello. I mean, I'm down here 2 seats. Probably the last thing ever I'll do in this business again after tonight.
Exactly. This is it.
Hey, I went out with James Spann. I mean, I was there the
Could
night.
be worse.
The night. Yeah.
If you got to go out, go out.
You got to go out.
Go out big.
Yeah.
Now, we are in the corner. We are in timeout here.
Louis right there. We could get him.
Oh, that'd be great.
Give me some direction there. Where do we want to go?
I'm going to be basically, I think, in
Now this camera becomes our
I
wide.
mean, basically be in Noah country. Oh, is there a camera there? I think James.
That high-tech tripod.
That is very impressive. We spare no expense here at Weatherbrains.
But what would OSHA think about it?
There's high wind warning.
There's all kinds of
I
hazards.
told him, I said, just take the lights off that thing and just put them on the garbage can, See how they
Poke your eye out.
So
on
that's
one of
the
those
guest
stairways.
camera? Is that?
That's the
This
wide-
camera,
Oh, this is the wide angle.
this is
camera.
the wide angle.
And that's
Oh.
the side of the guest
You've gone
head
to
camera.
great expense to get this trash can and a chair.
High tech.
We're very afraid,
High
Bart.
tech.
We're very
Is that like our
afraid.
monitor and the camera? We can see each other, right? You and me. You can see the side of Troy
Yeah, I don't want
No.
to see my side.
and the obligatory James
So
Sand
on
book
this
signing
shot,
poster.
we've got Laura, Kevin, Dr. John, Troy.
On which one?
So you guys are looking at that. I mean, just look at each other. Don't worry about the camera.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the camera. I'll worry about the camera.
Not like you've ever done broadcast.
And let me see that mic
Just
real
think.
quick, Dr.
Just some
John.
kid in his underwear.
Hello, mic check 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10.
Hey, Greg. How you doing? man?
All right.
Greg, I would run.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, we're going to get Kevin in and out because he's got to go. And we need to talk with Kevin. I mean, out of everybody in this whole building, we need to talk with Kevin.
What does Kevin have to talk about?
Yeah.
There you go. That's the title of tonight. Right?
Yeah, show title
Big
right
simulcast on
there.
MSNBC
Yeah,
tonight.
yeah, right.
Just do like the hostage video and make shifty movements with your eyes
Yeah.
and code
Yeah.
and
Morse
Yeah.
code.
Exactly.
say what you really
Dude,
mean.
Jeremiah didn't. Help me.
All right. Hello. Let me be sure the audio is clean before I start recording this because this is a little different.
Television.
And I need to listen to our talk back here. So I'm going to play this. Okay.
You see how the sausage is made over there.
So I'm going to adjust this a little bit this way.
James came to Oklahoma City and we did this from the emergency management conference. It's very cool. Just me and James were there and to see all the cool stuff.
It's not the night. Humiliated poor girl.
No,
All right.
that was-
All right, let's get this thing started. Recorder number 1. So you guys get to see how the sausage is made here. You know, this is the one time of the year when you see how the sausage is made.
I got the premium
Yeah.
Never look
seating.
at the show the same way.
I just
Yeah,
thought it
exactly.
just happened.
So let's open up and let's discuss the issue at hand.
What is
The issue.
800-pound gorilla.
We have a social scientist. We have Sue at the Weather Service in Birmingham. John, you're leading the discussion.
Oh, that's great.
So,
Yeah. You have to have a pick.
and again, John, this will be your mic. I'm going to start and I'll hand it over to you. Troy, that's your mic,
Yeah.
your mic, and your mic. All right, so we are recording.
You need to be
And
right. in
here
this.
we go.
Be off a little bit.
You can be off a little bit. I'm right. I will engineer this over here, so it'll be good.
Thank you, sir.
Here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is Weatherbrains, ladies and gentlemen. This is episode number 712. Weatherbrains is the weekly show all about weather. And this is for September 9th, 2019. And if you're watching us live or even listening, it's obvious we're in a different setting. We do this every year. We are live at the National Weather Association annual meeting, number 44. Last year, we were at 43 in St. Louis. We are in Huntsville, Alabama at the Von Braun Civic Center. It's been a great week, and we've got our regulars here. We have Rick Smith, who is back from is
Semi-regular.
semi-regular.
Semi-retired.
Still part of the
There you
team.
go.
Rick will always be in our hearts, part of the team. Rick is the WCM at the National Weather Service in Norman, Oklahoma. Of course, we have Bill Murray, the great guru of the National Weather Association. By the way, I found my stickers. I was griping the whole time.
Who'd you knock
Well, they were in my bag. They were in my bag,
Oh,
Look at you.
and I just missed them. So I now have my little stickers here.
Actually had to pay for these.
Wow.
Pay for them.
Wow.
Really?
So
trying to save money
we have
around
Troy
here.
Kimmel from Austin, Texas, who flew in. His arms are still
Yeah.
tired. He's just exhausted.
I am exhausted.
And
I have a feeling it's going to be a lot more exhausted in just a bit.
yeah, so and obviously this has been a highly charged meeting with what's happened within the NOAA organization and the National Weather Service, and we want to get right to that issue because that's what everybody here is thinking, and I think we just ought to talk about it first. So, John, I'm going to turn this over to you and let you bring in our guest.
All right. Thank you, James. Let me begin by saying that the presentations that were given today, particularly by Dr. Louis Cellini, who is the director of the National Weather Service, the solidarity that I felt within the weather enterprise today is probably greater than I've ever experienced before.
And you might share what he said for those that don't know.
Well, he was in total support of the National Weather Service office in Birmingham and the efforts that they provided in terms of their forecast support. The comments that were made immediately after an erroneous comment was made about the direction of Hurricane Dorian, and its potential impacts to the state of Alabama. I thought what he spoke about today and the way he delivered it was absolutely on point. I don't think he could have done a better job.
Well, one thing he did is he not only talked about what good staff we have in Birmingham, but as far as I'm concerned, he was talking, John, to every one of the employees nationwide. It didn't make any difference whether you're WFO at Guam or you're at any regional
Alaska,
headquarters or
right.
Alaska.
Exactly.
The important comment was that any National Weather Service employee would have done the absolute
Right.
same thing when
Yeah.
confronted with incorrect information.
Right.
They would have corrected it
Well-
because we're in the business of saving lives.
I want you to think just for a second. I responded to Dr. Joe Friday, who's a good friend, former head of the Weather Service, to the Facebook page when all this stuff rolled up. And I want you to think about what Birmingham did before we get a chance to expand to our guest here. What did Birmingham do a week ago down the road? They do what every Weather Service office does on a continuing basis, twice, at least 2 times a day. They critically think through the atmospheric process, and they go out to 7 days and they come out with a product, they defend it, and they produce it. And I look back at what Birmingham did last week, and I'm trying to argue where anyone finds any problem with what Birmingham did. Birmingham did exactly what their job was. They responded to rumors that you had, and I brought this up to Louis in a personal visit yesterday as we came in from the airport here. Birmingham did what any other office in the Weather Service would do. You present your forecast, you produce your reasoning. They did a perfect job, a week ago, and I don't see the problem. Obviously, the problem's on up the creek somewhere, but without going much further.
That's fine. That's
Yeah.
fine, Troy.
Yeah.
But that's precisely the comment that I wanted to make
Yeah.
in the solidarity among the entire weather enterprise, but in support of the National Weather Service.
The standing ovation was just absolutely.
I've never experienced that before in an NWA meeting.
That was got a little actually honestly got a little
Emotional.
choked up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
that was awesome.
Let me see if I can share some of this video. I'm going to roll some of this video here on the show.
So I've been a team since 1992. Turned out that's about the same time Ron showed up, and he was, in fact, the very first operation meteorologist I had ever interacted with. So I had the false impression, and everybody insulted false. But I thought he was.
I'm not so sure we can hear him. I'll play some of it, but you can.
All right. All right. Keep going then. Yeah. All right. Good. Well, I have 2 distinguished guests to my right this evening, Dr. Laura Myers from the University of Alabama at Tuscaloosa, and Kevin Laws, the meteorologist in charge in Birmingham. And I'm going to give Laura you a chance to speak in just a minute, but I want to hand the mic over to
Promotion.
over to Kevin and let him speak.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Well, I don't know how much I can really say or talk about. I know we're on the talk show, and it's hard to not be able to say, things are still fluid, obviously, and there's probably still some things to be said. But, I try to think about what are the positives here. And, out of everything negative and all the things that were said, when anything gets political, it gets nasty really quickly. And we all know that. It's the age we live in now.
Yep.
But there's something to be said about how a lot of the scientists and meteorologists, we all came together. A lot of times we have our own agendas. We all go our different directions. Media, the academic folks, operational folks always seem to necessarily not be on the same page. But today, in this past week, I think we saw solidarity there. We saw folks that I haven't heard from years reaching out saying, hey, I support you. And that's very meaningful to our office. And it's meaningful, across the agency as well. Also says something, too, about the scientific integrity that's still in place.
Yeah. And
people still believe in it. They believe in that process. And I think those are some very strong positives from all this negativity that certainly that came out this week. So you guys know our office has always been very progressive. We're on the leading edge of a lot of things, and we try a lot of experiments. Not to say that this was one of them. We didn't want to try this experiment necessarily.
Right.
But sometimes when you're progressive, you push the envelope, and sometimes you may upset people at times. But I think
But you didn't intend to. I mean, that was not the purpose of the response. The response was to quash a rumor, which was affecting the state of Alabama's population.
Well, absolutely. And I think it's well known now that we had no idea that the president had made a statement, and we had, we were actually responding to. The phone actually blew up.
You weren't thinking we're about to push the envelope here.
No.
You're just doing what you would normally do and just
That's where I'm at.
Social media.
That's right. And social media is probably not a meteorologist's strong point, at least one that
But it's important.
But it is.
You're broadcasters, like James said today.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And our job part of that job is to ensure public safety. And that's exactly what we did. And, when the first comment comes in on Twitter that's political, and everybody realizes, oh, wait a minute, something happened. And there's more to this than we thought. And, our intent was absolutely calm fears. And I think, James, you would agree there was people who blew your phone up. You were teaching Sunday school that morning, and you want to comment to that?
Yeah. So here's the deal. I do children's ministry at a church, and my phone started buzzing in my pocket. And when your phone fire hoses, right away there's something going on. And so I checked it. The first was, do I need to pick up my elderly parents that live in Gulf Shores today? The second was, do I need to cancel a surgery that we have planned at the big hospital in Mobile? I'm thinking, what is this? The weather's going to be fine this week. Where is this coming from? And so I investigated where you didn't. You just put out a tweet at the Weather Service indicating that there's going to be no impact, not knowing where it came from. I knew where it came from because I did an investigation just by looking at the Twitter stream. And so I responded to that tweet that the president put out indicating that Alabama was going to be impacted in some major way, or I forget his wording. But I just simply said, with no political implications at all, I said, Dorian will not impact the state of Alabama in any way, which is basically echoing what the Weather Service said. And it just went down the tubes into this political firestorm during the week, and it will not go away. And my great concern is going to weaken our message. And when NOAA came out Friday and basically threw you under the bus, and I mean you and your staff at the National Weather Service in Birmingham, I was beyond shocked. You don't do that. I'm from Butler County, Alabama. You don't come up against my friends. I will defend my people and my colleagues. And I had to say something. And I said in a tweet Friday, if you come after them, then you got to come after me.
Very profound.
And so it was a challenge to those in power that we're not going to take this, and the truth will always win. And it just continued to degenerate. And over the weekend, the political hate and anger and rage was just horrific. But my concern is that this will affect messaging going forward. But that what Louis said this morning was very freeing for me. I don't know about everybody else here.
Absolutely.
I thought it was powerful. He didn't dance around the issue. He didn't beat around the bush. He just came, and I hope you feel better.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, that was a very powerful message. And and one that I don't think we've heard from an NWS director in a long time, standing with the troops, so to speak, and really standing with the entire weather community. And that's there was a very humanistic moment there. I know it was emotional for me. I'm sure it was for all of you sitting here if you listen to it. But and I understand there's politics, and the thing that amazes me is that there are people in this country and other countries as well who can deal with politics. We spent 1 week behind the curtain a little bit on the politics side, and I'm ready to get it out forever, never to go back. Never
for governor.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know how these guys stand it. I mean, they must have some kind of superhuman emotional strength that allows them. I mean, I'd be in tears every night if I had to deal with this.
One thing too, Kevin, that I don't think we've made clear here. Part of the NWA meeting is a broadcasters meeting. We've had a lot of broadcasters here from across the country, and everyone at this table knows that sometimes it's hard to get the broadcaster to do anything. The broadcasters right now, Kevin, are with the Weather Service. I saw that this morning in Louis' speech, because he included everyone. He said, this is what we do. And I mean, what the Weather Service does and what we do, this is an inexact science as far as weather forecasting is concerned. And to get the broadcasters behind you, I think it got the broadcaster support behind the Weather Service even this morning that I noticed.
And it's an international story. I mean, I received
absolutely.
a call from the French press agency today wanting, I told them the story, and they said, well, there's this New York Times article that says that the political appointees may lose their jobs. And it's what that happens, that will be the absolute ultimate shame, because it would set our enterprise back a decade at least. You go back to 1999 and Hurricane Floyd basically was following a similar path.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yes.
And in that process, that hurricane, was forecast to turn north, but 3 million people had to evacuate in its path. And it caused all sorts of problems, cost billions of dollars. And we didn't have that with this. This was about as well a forecast hurricane as you could.
And the comment was made earlier that Miami International remained open throughout the entire time.
With a hurricane, 95 miles.
Right. The National Hurricane Center, we pointed this out earlier in a broadcast, what a fantastic job that they've done. And Birmingham, and as far as I'm concerned, all the Weather Service offices from Florida north to Maine, I thought did an amazing job. And I would be willing to bet you there's some political types in Washington. This is Troy saying this. They'd like to see this story go away pretty quick now.
So let's talk about the New York Times article that came out today.
Yeah.
So somebody talk about this.
Well, Wilbur, help me out, y'all. Wilbur
Ross.
Commerce Director. It came out today that basically he threatened that a couple of people's jobs.
And one of them will be here tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Which I had always said that this morning's talk with Louis was must-watch television. I've been corrected now that must-watch TV is probably tomorrow morning, because this crowd is going to want to have some answers. And I won't say what I said because I mentioned certain body parts that NOAA didn't have. A press. Let's talk. We have people that have been around, seen Washington. You issue a press release on Friday afternoon at 4:30. That's a press dump. That's when the media basically is they're comatose by then, going into the weekend.
No opportunity for a reply or rebuttal.
And on this press release, there's no name. There's not. It's like, I don't believe the press release. I think the NOAA template for the press release was basically used, and someone else placed it inside of that, and they were told they were going to do it, and so no one signed their name. But that's Troy's view on it.
And the really criminal thing is that there are thousands of people in the Bahamas tonight that have either died or are homeless, and we're talking about this silly.
Yeah.
And that just breaks my heart. Yeah, it's really silly.
Well, let me back up another thing too, and that is what gets lost in all the noise, and that's what it is noise, is how great the Hurricane Center forecast was. It's probably one of the best hurricane forecasts that we've had in this generation. And how many billions of dollars they saved by getting that thing exactly right. And that's a real shame, because my friends at the Hurricane Center really nailed it.
Yeah.
And there were some nervous people in South Florida on that weekend.
Yeah.
You know, because what if it didn't turn? What
Right.
if it did make the? You know, we were in place for that turn to happen, but fortunately, it did exactly what.
We heard earlier this evening from Kevin out in Wichita Falls. I wanted to hear Kevin's response to all this social. I want, yeah, we'd have cleared this room. I mean, this room would be cleared all the way to Nashville.
Yeah. What's the mood in the weather service in Birmingham right now? The national spotlight has been on you. Out of everybody, the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of meteorologists are here. The spotlight is on you. What is your mood? What's the mood in the office?
Well,
of
Kevin,
Birmingham?
my question was, do you think this, for good or bad, changed the way that your staff is going to react to social media?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I will say that, and I think they hit some low points perhaps, and they had a visit today by the regional director, and also John Murphy, the CEO of the Weather Service, came down. They also received a lot of phone calls, but I think, you know, anytime you're down like this and you hit some low points, obviously Friday afternoon was a low point, and to see the outpouring of support and everybody who calls is on your side, it's really reassuring to them. But they know that weather is one of those kind of businesses where you have a passion for it, okay?
Yeah.
And that passion doesn't die because of something like this. It doesn't get shaken.
Mm-hmm.
They know that we work for the American people, and that's where they serve. And they have a servant's heart. Everybody in that office has a servant's heart. And so something like this doesn't shake a servant's heart.
Well, you said it's a low point. I personally think it's a high point for Birmingham, because you did exactly what the office was supposed to do, and that is, someone yelled fire in the theater, and you straightened it out. You straightened it out. I consider it to be a very high point for Birmingham. And besides that, you didn't know where it came from. All you were dealing with was the holler of fire in the theater.
Right.
You know, and so I see it as a very high point for Birmingham.
And there's two things you don't mess with in Alabama. You don't mess with weather or football.
Yeah. Or James Spann.
He's part of that weather.
Any other offices like Rick? What's the mood in your office?
I haven't been in my office since it happened, so I can't tell you. But
I will say this: one of the first letters that I got was from the Norman office, with total support and solidarity with us. So.
Yeah, the Birmingham and the Norman office have a kind of a unique relationship. Back when your former MIC was there, Jim Stepkovich, he reached out to us and really helped us after the May 2013 tornadoes. It was a tough time, and you guys had just been through all that in April of 2011. And he really helped us out. He encouraged us to get counseling and things like that. So I was glad to see that our MIC did that. But it has to affect it affects everybody. It affects everybody in the weather enterprise. It affects everybody in the weather service.
Person.
If you attack one person, if you attack one person, I keep hitting that. Sorry, you attack one person, you're attacking everybody.
Right.
And there's y'all said it earlier, but it was just so amazing just to feel that bond and that camaraderie and the partnership.
What's interesting about it too is that, and I don't think people outside the community don't really understand, is that the weather community is a small community. We all know each other by name, and we always are going to have each other's back. It's almost like, having a team. We're like a team, and we have each other's back, and we see each other every year after year, and so we just have that solidarity that comes with the business.
And I think people don't understand that. They think, well, it's Birmingham. They're not talking about. No, it's anytime, whether it's a forecast issue or something like this, everybody feels that everybody is going to take up and be behind you. So.
And Dr. Cellini brought up this morning, Kevin, that the Birmingham office has already been through hell this year with the March tornadoes in Lee County.
Absolutely.
And so, that was a very emotional thing for your office.
Yeah, I think the last time I was on, I think we were right after that event, and I still hadn't got my thoughts together. I don't think at that point, but I took that one hard. I think that I took that one harder than I took 2011. 2011 just seemed so unreal that it's hard to this day to get your arms wrapped around a major outbreak. But something about Lee County has sort of stuck with me, and hearing the stories and kind of being on the front lines down with the actual victims and listening to their stories. If you have a passion about this business, want to be in this business, or young and starting out, I would encourage anybody to go out to these damaged paths and really understand what they're doing and what the implications are of the work that we do every day.
And until today, I didn't completely connect it, but Louis mentioned it. very eloquently today that that's part of the reason you tweeted what you did, is because, and we experience it in our area, this storm anxiety, and people are very sensitive to anything. You tell people in Alabama that something bad's coming, then there's a lot of people. There's many people that are psychologically affected by that and have PTSD and all kinds of things.
Sure.
And so I didn't really put it together today that was one of the main drivers, is to tell people, and we do that all the time in our office too. Hey, it's not going to be that bad. Calm down. It's so important.
And
all these events tie together.
And it speaks volumes. I'm sure your office, James, you as well. It speaks volumes that people trust us enough to come to us to get the real story like right away. And that's why everything transpired the way it did, because they heard the message. They said, wait a minute. And they came right to the sources and said, hey, is this true? Is this what's going on? And I need real information from you. And I think that speaks volumes.
Here's the hard part. And again, I'm going to bring Laura in a minute, because this is a bunch of social science stuff. Not now. In just a minute. I'll talk to you.
You can't get rid of it.
Yeah.
You're always in trouble.
You can't run yet. Now, and again, you've seen all the social media feedback. I'd say 80% supports us and you. 20% are saying now, I will never listen to you again. You are fake news. And the question is, how does that affect it? I will tell you, it's in my mind. It is crawled up in my head right now. I don't know if that's crawled up into your head or not. Maybe they haven't seen that, or maybe you've not gotten a lot of that, but it worries me that now our messaging might be confused going forward with people that believe that we were in error by saying Alabama will not be affected in any way. There are people to this day that believe we were wrong, that there were Hurricane Center forecasts that showed Alabama being affected in a major way.
Oh, we were very impacted, James. We had 95 degrees and lots of substance.
We were in the subsidence ring. We needed sunscreen. And they pulled up these old graphics, maybe 5 days before September 1st, 4 or 5 days, that showed a couple of spaghetti lines going up into Alabama, which had nothing to do with September 1st. But let me just say, and if anybody disagrees me around this table, the Weather Enterprise was confident, in full agreement, there would be no impact on the state of Alabama on the morning of September 1st. This was no political statement from you, right?
No, not at all.
Sure wasn't a political statement from me.
Yeah.
I just thought the president made a mistake. Everybody misspeaks. Goodness, I do. Everybody does.
Nobody's perfect.
I just assume he would come back and say, I made a mistake. There's no problem, but that didn't happen.
You do know what the president is, right?
You're going down.
What's that? No, I'm just, I don't mind saying it. Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Yeah, right. No, but even here this morning, we showed video of the cone as the forecast track changed. And I was watching it closer than I ever had this morning in the conference. I never saw that cone anywhere in
Getting a
Alabama.
call from the White House.
You're not reading very well, says the IRS. But I mean, I saw it this morning. I saw it in this room. That cone, if it got to the Alabama state line, it's beyond my sight that I was able to see it. And keep in mind what Kevin's office did. All they're trying to do was dispel rumors. I mean, your phone started ringing. Apparently, a lot of people's phones started ringing in Alabama. And as far as I'm concerned, what Birmingham did, they did quickly and they did efficiently. And I think it was, again, a high point for that office.
Absolutely. And I don't think a lot of people realize that's something the Weather Service has had to do a lot more of since social media,
Right.
since there's a lot more people that have access to all these various forecasts out there.
Right.
We talk about storms and storm systems long before we ever used to, just because of rumor control.
Well, it's
One
like
model run, one spaghetti plot says this, and then you have to go out and address it. And that's exactly what happened.
I'm glad to see some of this discussion because the track models, which are a different thing. I mean, we're talking about it's not the forecast. No one understands that. And I always said that was Pandora's box being opened when those ever even found the internet. Those individual model forecasts.
And if you look at the deterministic GFS tonight, in 10 days, there's going to be a major hurricane east of the Bahamas. But if you look at the ensembles, it could be, and it may not even happen at all, but it could be anywhere from 300 miles south of Mobile to Bermuda.
You want in 10
Right.
days.
You can. You're exactly right. Dr.
Where's
John.
the mood in the? Do you know what the mood in the office is? You've been here for a few days. I mean, how are you guys doing?
We actually drove down today and to meet with the folks. Yeah, we went down today and they fed us, which is always nice. And but most, if not everybody, showed up, and that's a good sign, right? I mean, they wanted to ask questions and hear from. I think over the weekend, the past, especially the speech this morning, they all live streamed it, obviously, at the office. And I think that was game changing for them. And it really made a difference in how they viewed it because, you know, you're in limbo and you don't know if you're going to, frankly, you don't know if you're going to lose your job over this. And so I think the reassurance that they had, and, you know, I won't repeat everything that was said because I think some of it was just kind of personal to us, but you could imagine, I'm sure, what was said, that we had their full support and that they believed in our office. They love what we do, and they understand that we aren't political, and we never have been. There's not a lot of politics in our office, period, and just in a general sense, and they understood we were just doing our job.
And I want to make this is clear, Gabe, because I wasn't sure about this. You're telling me, Kevin, that all you know is the phones are ringing. You were getting feedback. You had that office, Birmingham, had no idea where this had originated.
That's exactly right.
Thank you.
None whatsoever.
Okay, thank you.
Case
And-
closed.
and-
I want the world to know that.
Because you hear, oh, they're a bunch of whatever wing, you know, and they're out to get so and so, and they did that as a dig,
Yeah, it tends to be the lower
and
IQ.
that's not true. I mean, that is not
Sorry.
true. Now,
Absolutely.
again, let me say,
Had to say
I
it.
knew
Sound
where it
lost.
came from, but not the Weather Service office in Birmingham.
Yeah,
Let me
right.
make that perfectly clear. And I hate politics. I don't care. Anybody that knows me, I despise politics. I've seen it tear this country apart. But I did respond to the original tweet that started the horrible reaction in the state that had to be addressed, because I thought people needed to see where it was coming from. And let me just calm everybody down. And that's what you did, although you didn't know where it was coming from. There was a big difference. Your office didn't know. I did know. And I want to make that perfectly clear. So if the IRS needs to audit somebody or do whatever you need to do, don't come after them. You come after me.
Well, what I don't understand is for someone to sit here and tell me I'm through with the Weather Service. I'll never go to them. Tell me who did what wrong. Please tell me who did what wrong. No one did anything wrong. The Hurricane Center did a very good job of what they did. I'm amazed still they called the stall. They did this. The office in Birmingham did what they did, just like the Weather Service in Miami, Melbourne, Jacksonville, Charleston, right up the coast. And if you're saying you're not going to pay attention to the Weather Service because of this, you need to critically think through what you're saying, because they did an excellent job.
Well, you know, and I got to run. You got a long line of people here waiting to get on the show, and you got to talk to Dr. Myers as well. But do you remember when I actually called you first, almost first out of the gate, and because I saw what had happened, and you remember what we said the very first thing? I told you very first thing that the irony here is we had no idea that this is what it would happen. That was the very, very first thing I said, and out of my mouth, and we're so non-political in our office that we wouldn't have known the president said it, because we don't keep up with politics. We just honestly don't. And it's just,
you don't bring it to work with it. I mean,
we stay focused on the mission, and because it's so critical and so important that it's almost not allowed. It really isn't allowed in the branch that we work into, and we stay non-political. And so that's my story.
Your loyalties to the people of Alabama, and we appreciate that.
Absolutely. And the next time we have a storm, whether it be a hurricane, tornadoes, guess who's going to be there on the front lines again? It'll be us. Promise you that.
It makes us feel good.
Just know your office is appreciated and loved. Okay, you
Absolutely.
understand that.
We're right behind.
Absolutely.
So
Thank
thanks,
you.
Kevin.
Thank
You
you
take
very
off.
much.
We know
Thank
you're
you,
busy.
sir.
Thank you, Kevin.
So, John, I want you to talk with Laura before we bring in our guest about the social impacts of messaging if we have a hurricane in 3 weeks. I want you to debrief her so we know what to do if we need to change anything.
All right, so the task is mine, but let me introduce Dr. Laura Myers from the University of Alabama at Tuscaloosa. We first met, ironically, after the Birmingham outbreak, because that's where the NWA meeting was. And I was moderating the town hall session in which you were part, and Dr. Kim Cloak was in there as well. So your expertise is in the area of behavioral science, social science, and you are now applying that to the messaging and the communication within the National Weather Service and within the weather enterprise. So let's talk about how the public responds to the words that we use and how that information is conveyed.
Well, since 2011, we've been doing a lot of research on just how the public perceives the message and how they get the message. And in doing those analyses, we're looking at the whole weather enterprise. We're looking at what the mission is of the WFOs, what the mission is of the emergency managers, the whole process, what the broadcast meds do. And so it's really all about what the public needs to take the appropriate action. And so that's how the WFOs and the emergency managers and the broadcast meds respond. It's like they know their communities, they know their culture, and they know what their public needs. And they know that they need location, they need timing, they need impacts. They need that information. The biggest thing is to cut through the confusion.
Yeah.
And that's where this falls in, is how do we cut the confusion? What Kevin's office did was respond to the confusion.
Yep.
And they were seeking assistance. They wanted information, and Kevin's office did that. And that's how you're going to have to go forward in the next event. It's your public needs that information. They need it simple and concise. They need to be educated. I think the big benefit of all of this thing that happened is the public now has a better understanding of the passion that the Weather Service has for public safety and human lives. And so I think that's going to make it, that's going forward. They have a better knowledge of why the WFOs do what they do. We found that the public generally doesn't know what the WFOs are. They don't know what the National Weather Service is.
And that's what I was going to ask you, Laura. I asked you the same question I asked Kevin. Do you think from a social media standpoint, this will change about how the WFO, will it cause a moment of pause in there before they hit that, Twitter thing, and I'm Kevin, I've become Kevin. But that Twitter thing, but I'm serious. Do you think it may affect, at least temporarily, how they use that tool?
Well, I think they use the tool just like the whole weather enterprise uses that tool to try to concisely convey that information. And I don't think they're going to change it. I think they're going to continue to do what they need to do, because so much of the public is on the other end of that social media. And there is so much confusion generated by that social media. So if they hesitate, if they do anything differently, it's going to kind of affect the confidence people have in what's going on. They need to keep doing it. When you look at the advent of social media in public safety, fire departments, law enforcement agencies, emergency management were really afraid to go on social media in the beginning because they were afraid of how it was going to be perceived, what was going to happen with it. And so a lot of them were slow adopters of it. And a lot of them were prohibited from it. The Weather Service for a very long time couldn't use it. And so then, some of our early adopters in the Weather Service
use it.
come along and start defining how social media is used in the weather warning dissemination process. And so that's what Birmingham does, and they do a really good job of it. And what they're doing in social media is putting out what the public needs and clarifying that confusion.
The third word, which we don't talk enough about in National Weather Service, is service. That's precisely that's their mantra. Yeah. James talks about we're servants of the people. That message is actually getting lost in all of this. And perhaps what has happened in the last few days, maybe that'll come full circle and the public will understand that is the primary goal.
And that's what I'm hearing from the public. I'm getting all kinds of people sending messages to me about what is going on. They're horrified that this has happened. And they're just like, what's happening? Because they didn't realize how this whole process worked. And now they're seeing this situation and they're like, wait a minute, we need that. We need that passion. We need that commitment. Right. We don't want that affected. And so I think that's the big thing. I think it's really highlighted the service mindset of the National Weather Service.
Very good point. Where do you see us going in terms of improving our communication for the general public?
Well, the big thing is that, when you look at the public in terms of their weather awareness needs, Some communities are more weather aware than others. Certain proportions of populations are more weather aware than others. And so it's really trying to figure out who are we missing, who are the vulnerable, how do we need to message to those that are the hardest to reach and the hardest to convince? Because we're doing a really good job with most people.
And we found that in the town hall, that the folks that were responding and knew what we were talking about were already weather savvy.
Exactly. And that's the big thing, especially here in Alabama. We have a lot of vulnerable populations. They live in places that can't withstand severe weather events. They need to have a plan where they get out during a watch. And that's one of the hardest things to get across, because people don't want to have to take those actions during a watch, but they're not safe where they are. So I watch the Weather Service offices and the broadcast men spend so much time on outreach, trying to help those vulnerable populations, help them figure out what they can do. There's mobility issues as well. We tell people this is what they need to do, but they may not have the capacity to get to a shelter or to go somewhere else or get to a basement. So trying to reach them, that's what James does such a good job, and the other broadcast men do, is explain to people what they can do, even if they don't think they have an option. So I've seen such a transition since 2011. It's just been unbelievable.
But Laura, we in Lee County, Alabama, earlier this year, we saw that event, and to hear Kim on this show to talk about that and what the social scientists did, like yourself, that went down and talked to those people, you could see it in Kim's eyes. The emotion, you go down and you talk to these people, that vulnerable population, how do you think we're going to be able to get to them, Laura? I mean, we can't have 22, 23 people dying. We can't have that here in the United States like that. And my question is, how do we get to those people? How do we get to those people in that type of population?
Well, the biggest thing is kind of community education.
Okay.
And the emergency manager down there does a bang-up job.
That's what I've heard.
She's one of the top emergency managers I've seen across the country. And so she works with that community. She was trying to get community shelters for them. She was trying to figure out ways to help them because she knew how vulnerable they are. Yeah. And I think that's what we can do, is help those local emergency managers figure out what are solutions, what are ways to deal with those issues. Because since 2011, a lot of communities have gotten those big community shelters. And so she was trying to do the same thing. And so if we can help these communities figure out how to get the big assets they need to help those people.
Well, let me ask you this then, and maybe put your feet to the fire a little bit. We're a number of months past that event now. Are we having any success in Lee County, Alabama? Have we, as those people rebuild and try to put their lives back together, less family members and friends that they've lost, do you think that we're able to get in on this and be able to do what we need to do in Lee County, Alabama, and for that matter, maybe the rest of the country beyond that?
Yeah, I think what happened in Lee County kind of sensitized everybody about that kind of vulnerability. And unfortunately, what happens after a big event like that, that community gets a lot of attention. They get a lot of help. And that's what happened in Tuscaloosa. Yeah. I mean, that's why we have the community shelters now, because it was so bad. And so we've got to spread that. Because one of the problems with Lee County was they hadn't recently experienced a really bad event. So they weren't getting the attention. Kathy was working really hard to get that attention, but it's like it hadn't happened there in a long time. And so we've got to figure out how to not be reactive. We need to be proactive.
Yeah. One other question. That storm occurred earlier this year. From a social science standpoint, how long do people remember that?
I call it the 9/11 effect.
Yeah, right.
Because after 9/11, there was about a 2-year window where everybody was sensitized to it. Okay. And that was a really big one. After 2011, they're still sensitized and that's the PTSD and the anxiety that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So the really big ones last a while, but the other ones don't, especially if it doesn't get a lot of media attention. Yeah. Yep. After Hurricane Michael, the media went away after a couple of weeks because there was another big national event. Nobody's aware of how bad it was and how bad it still is. And so I think that's where the memories go, we just don't keep enough attention on it.
And James, you raised an important point in your talk. People don't want to sit in a tornado shelter for 6 hours during a tornado watch because, the general assumption is just, when the watch comes, go get in the shelter. That's not feasible.
Enterprise, Alabama is a good example of that, the high school that day, if I remember correctly, where you sit in shelter for 5 hours and every tornado warning is going by, nothing happens. And the last one comes and it destroys the place.
It's hard to get people to sit in shelter for 30 or 45 minutes.
Okay.
And you mentioned we may need an intermediate product, James, between the watch and the warning. You basically bragged on the MCDs from the SPC that day because they were outstanding.
Yeah.
And I guess we've got time now. Yeah,
Laura, thank you
Laura.
very much.
Thank you.
let's get our
Come on in,
organizer
Greg.
on here tonight.
Run the other direction, Greg.
Yeah.
Run the other direction.
Don't worry about the camera.
Guilt,
are everywhere.
guilt by us.
We're watching you.
Yeah, well, so is everybody else now. It's
Exactly.
my pleasure to welcome in Greg Stump. Greg is here at the meeting running the Research to Operations Nexus. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we've been doing this for 5 years now. At the end of the annual meeting, we've done 2 at the AMS annual meeting as well. And essentially what we're doing is we're bringing researchers and operational meteorologists together, hopefully for the first time, to talk about specific topics in kind of a speed mentoring fashion. One of our biggest goals here is to try to establish new relationships between these two groups. As Dr. Uccellini was saying during the preamble, there's kind of this chasm or valley between operations and research that's real hard to bridge that sometimes. So what we're doing is we're hoping that we can find, for example, forecasters in the field have a great idea for improving forecast or warning or something like that, but they don't have a researcher to kind of champion that and help move the work along. So there's that, which is called the O2R, Operations to Research process. And then the other way around, researchers who've been working on a great research project would like to see this implemented operationally. So that's the R2O process. So what we're hoping to do at these meetups is to establish these new relationships, and then we're going to follow on. And we're going to keep track of these folks and see how things progress over the years. And we're kind of hoping, after 5 years of doing this now, we should have somewhat of a track record that we can look at and possibly use that for folks who have funding, like research grants and things like that, that they might say, hey, this is a great project here that we've heard about. Maybe we'll go ahead and put some money toward it. So
Are there some outcomes at this point after 5 years that you can make generalizations about?
right now, I touched base with the folks about a year and a half ago, and there were a few people that had met in the first 2 years of the meetup that were continuing projects that they were working on. And actually, one of them, a group of people who met at the very first meetup in Oklahoma City in 2015, went on to complete a project. So I'm thinking of inviting them to talk about that project at the AMS meeting in Boston as well. So kind of kicked off here at the meetup. If we don't get this, relationship building, at least these people are talking about these topics as well. And there's some great ideas that are coming up. Just to kind of air some thoughts and feelings about specific topics. And they range from all over the place: tropical meteorology, seasonal, subseasonal climate stuff, heat, flooding, thunderstorms, QLCS, all sorts of different topics.
There's no shortage of topics.
Yeah. Greg, the Ron you talked about that we're doing this is a tribute to someone else,
Right.
in that, and I really want you to talk about him. And
So Ron Przmolinski was the Science and Operations Officer at the St. Louis, Missouri Forecast Office. He was either the first or the second SOOP in the nation. So, and he was right there in the nexus of research and operations. He was always leaving his office to visit universities, National Severe Storm Lab and other labs, and he was always working to bring the ideas he had to researchers, and for researchers to kind of lay some ideas and things like that, themes on him. So a lot of the work he did with bow echoes and, like I said, quasi-linear convective system tornadoes and things, that was all born out of this collaboration. In fact, 1992 was one of the first times I collaborated with him on a project looking at QLCS tornadoes. We didn't call them that at the time, but we were lucky enough that one came through the north side in Norman, and we had 2 Doppler radars and it was right in the baseline. So we're able to do a dual Doppler analysis of these things. So that was myself, Ron Prismalinski, and Don Burgess. So.
Well, to hear some of the stories from some of Ron's colleagues tonight, pretty amazing man.
Yes, absolutely. It's a shame we lost him way too early. He had so much more to give to the profession, I think. So.
Well, I think he would be proud of what y'all have done,
absolutely.
And I know he's smiling on you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And update us on Warren on Forecast, Greg, the projects you've got going on. What are some of your research things right now
I'm
you're
not
working on?
involved directly with the Warren on Forecast work, but some others are. And essentially, we're starting to really get down to that level of being able to fill the gap between watch and warning with some kind of a probabilistic guidance product or something like that. I think the neat thing is going to be the ability to be able to predict that something's going to happen before the convection's even there or before it's become severe. So now there'll be a social science aspect of that, because a lot of people like to confirm when they hear a warning.
Exactly.
They say, oh, tornado warning in 90 minutes, where's the storm? Mm-hmm. So that's going to be a whole new area of communication that we're going to have to deal with. So anyway,
Excellent.
all right.
Thank you.
You got work to do.
Somebody else.
Yeah.
The group is still working there.
There you go.
Right.
Hey, Greg, thank you, Greg. Yeah. And who is this young lady?
Well,
and it's her birthday, ladies.
It is her birthday.
We're not
That's
going
right.
to see her, are we?
Happy birthday to
You
you.
don't want us to.
The NWA has known Elise Schultz for years, because was I president when you first came on as the student
I
rep?
was on the council. I know that. I was on the council at the time.
Well, I was remembering this last night because Janice and I had a picture taken in front of the 2007 in Reno, in the basement of Reno.
Okay.
I think Alan Gerard,
Absolutely.
and we were up until 2 a.m. or burning the midnight oil.
Yeah.
And that was my introduction to NWA Council.
Yeah, you set the stage, because now that is a role that is filled every year with this organization.
She did.
It was great. I mean, it was great as a student. Personally, you get to see the workings of the organization, and that helps me not only bring my views or my opinions and from the student perspective, and getting that representation, but also it's helping train myself and others as we go forward. So then now, as we're further in our career, we can start serving those leadership roles to continue to advance the organization. And it's been really great to see the other students and hear their feedback. And
We've had a great student participation in this meeting. One of the best ones I've seen in recent memory. So let's talk a little bit about where your career has gone.
Yeah, this is interesting.
This is
You kind of
fast.
changed a little bit. So
did you guys hear my talk earlier? You didn't hear my talk earlier, did you?
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Yeah,
That's fine.
I
I'm just
did.
wondering what I'm going.
We were busy answering phone calls from France.
Yeah. So the one
Really?
theme a lot of people have gone with is the nonlinear approach. And it's funny, when I gave a talk to the students earlier, and I talked about how I've known I wanted to be a meteorologist since I was 4 years old, and I wanted to get my PhD. We're still working towards that PhD part someday. But I mean, I knew what I wanted to do. However, life has its way of taking its twists and turns. And so it's taken me a while. So I was, in academia and graduate school, and then worked for the university, and then started doing a startup while at the university, and then pulled back from the university, did the startup, and then went to a private sector job. I mean, for practical reasons, if I needed some money to pay off all those student loans.
Understand.
It's part of life.
Certainly do understand that.
And so at the private now, I get to do private weather research. And finally, I think all my interest areas are coming together, where I'm doing a little bit of business, doing the research. And what fits well with the Ron right now is the research to operations for our customers, taking research to operations to applications, and having something people can use to make a difference, to help people do their job better, whether that be DoD work, which is a lot of what the work I do right now, or whether it be more civilian applications with weather service needs and other things like that.
But we'll talk about the challenges, Elise, of balancing family, profession, and education, and all this stuff.
It is a challenge, and we have my family. My husband is also a meteorologist, and so he's a NASA meteorologist. And without his support, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing. Without my support, he wouldn't be able to do what he's doing. And so we say Team Schultz all the time. And we tell the kids, because it takes everything, and they need to see growing up that it really is the give and take. And there's times, I mean, I saw my kids for half hour this morning, and luckily I saw them that, right? I'm local here. but it is a lot to try to balance that. And there's give or take. And I think I've come to where there's 3 key words: boundaries, priorities, and help. Establishing what your boundaries are when you say yes and no. The priorities, family comes first, and it's a balance. Like this week, I'm here at NWA. Family understands that. And then asking for help. Sometimes, especially when one of us travel, you need to ask for help. And that's one of my weaknesses. So I think I can do it all, and I can't.
How old are the kiddos? Because I've seen you. The kids have attended more meetings than I have. I haven't seen the whole family here.
Ribbons like you had.
And how old are the kids now?
Yeah, they were at Weatherfest on
Yeah.
Saturday, running around with Daddy. So one just turned 7, my son, and then
Give them a shout out now. We got a name.
Nathan. So yeah, Nathan turned 7. He's in 2nd grade. So he's loving. He wants to be a scientist or engineer or something. He likes to build things. Right? He's really good at math and science and reading. He's coming along.
Yeah.
And then Ellie is 3.5, and she wants to be an astronaut. And so we're gonna, right? So she is so smart and so challenging, and challenges us constantly, and just her abilities to do so much. And then Shelby is just over 1. She's 14 months, and she keeps us moving, and they're just great. And they're just, I live for my kids, and my kids I need them, they need me.
Does it surprise you all that much knowing about this family, that those kids are like that? To me, and not, because I know Chris at least pretty well, but I would imagine the kids are challenged all the time, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for both of you.
Thank you. Yeah, we're teaching them how to use your radar scope and how to read the radar. And there was one severe weather day. I don't remember which one, but Nathan had the tablet out, and he's like, "Okay, Mom," and it does helmet on. He's like, "Guys, book favorite. Do we need to go? There's a warning." I'm like, "No, it's at the other end of the county. We're okay." Like, I'm trying to understand that part of it.
So you taught him to respect the polygon?
Yes.
There you go.
The weather's radio going off. And
does he ever wear suspenders?
Not yet.
Very good.
Ellie.
It's just a matter of time.
We're getting there.
Yes, sir, James.
We'll all be working for these kids.
No, that's exactly right.
Better be nice to them now.
And Ellie's afraid of, she respects thunder. I mean, we taught them when thunder roars, go indoors. I mean, we're both lightning researchers throughout our career. And so she's like, "There's thunder. I need to go inside. Let's go." And she won't even get out of the car. So we're working on the balance. But they're great. And it's wonderful. We learn so much from them, as anyone with children know. And I think it helps make us better scientists and better communicators, trying to communicate to our children and their friends, and doing school talks for them and my niece and nephews and all that. So, yeah.
And thank you for your help Saturday at Weatherfest.
It was
a big day. It was really fun.
Well, and I was part of the inaugural Rocket City Weatherfest.
Right,
back
you came on our show and talked about it, right?
And so it was great to have all of our National Weather Association friends and colleagues here celebrating with our community, because this community really is very weather aware, and they love all this information. So.
And you were also part, I don't know if this is a new trend, but I saw more amazing tag team presentations today than I've ever seen. And it's not easy to do a presentation with 2 people.
Right.
But yours was one where it was just really good, and it really demonstrates it's an example on the stage of different agencies, different groups working together. And yours was great. And there was a lot of great ones today. And I don't know if that's a new trend, but I got to get a partner, I guess, for my next presentation.
And in our business too, it's like she said. I mean, you have the researchers, you have operational meteorologists, maybe in the private sector, and sometimes there's not a lot of exchange across those boundaries. I agree with you. I agree with you a whole lot, Rick. That you are seeing that nowadays, and that's good, because we need to cross those boundaries.
Think of what the students are seeing at this meeting so far.
No, I agree.
From presentations like Elise's and her involvement with mentoring, and the solidarity that they saw today.
Louis,
They've had an eyeful.
What do they say? And you, James, you said it. It's a family reunion. I mean, that's what I always say. I mean, you are my people. And I mean, everyone's like, "Oh, you're at a conference all day on your birthday." I'm like, "Yeah." I love it. And I've been messaging my boss today. I'll give him a shout out, because I told him he has to watch the recording. And but it's just, I mean, just the passion everyone has, and I share that passion. It's a family, and I think the students are able to see that. And like, when I was a student first came, when I first came to council, and when I first came to my first meetings a few years before that, it's just the passion to help people, to do our jobs, but do it in a whole different light than a lot of people see in other careers. That's what people keep coming back for. And I mean, that's what we say. And that's when some people retire. They don't retire. I mean, right. We just keep coming at it.
Yeah.
And that's what I hope like my career will be someday when we get to that point. But it's just, I'll be riding this high for weeks because it's just wonderful.
Outstanding. Outstanding.
Well, you've lifted us up, at least. Thank you.
Yay.
My heart is warm.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you for spending some time
And
with us.
you know what? We wouldn't have expected any different.
That's
It's a
right.
salute to you. I
And
mean, I'm
happy
serious.
birthday.
And happy birthday.
Thank you. It's been wonderful getting to meet everyone over the years and building those relationships and mentorships. And so you guys keep it up too.
Hey,
We promise.
Thank you guys.
yeah, good to see you.
Bring Bruce in here.
Let's bring in Bruce Thomas.
I've got to talk about Bruce as he comes up here. Yes, you are.
Talk about his new look.
Yeah,
Well,
he's
no, I mean, I want him
He's
to.
got
I want
the
him to
Jim
put his
Cantori
head into
look.
the
Yeah.
camera.
There you go.
I got to
Welcome.
tell you this morning
Welcome.
that Bruce was talking about this morning. He wrapped up the session on mentoring with a comment from the crowd. I loved it this morning and talked about the give and take between the mentors and the mentees, and a lot of good comments in there. And Bruce came up at the very end. He says, I've been through this and so forth. And, and he says, and you live through the years and then you end up learning things from the people that you mentored in the past. And then finally it gets to the point where you should bring gifts. And I like that comment this morning because I agree with that one completely.
You know how to bring
These
the
old
house
people.
down every time.
You do.
Bruce.
You do. And I love the new hairstyle.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. I want to look more like Bill Murray and Vince McMahon. But you have suspenders, so this has been a great meeting. Unbelievable this morning. I was touched by the whole thing. And I was really touched the unification of the people behind Dr. Uccellini's wonderful speech, and just being here in Huntsville, Alabama. Got to listen to Bob Barron talk about his new institute, the Barron Institute, that he discussed in the new Mesonet for the state of Alabama that they're going to institute here. Things are happening in Rocket City. So it's great to be here with all of you.
And you've had a little career.
Yeah, you've had a little career change. I want you to talk about it.
Fill us in.
Yeah.
You were the spokesperson for Midland Radio for how many years?
I worked
15?
15 years.
15
I did 17 years on television. I say almost like serving time, but I enjoyed every bit of it.
How true it is.
Started my career down in Texas and ended my TV career in Kansas City. But then went to work for Midland Radio in 2004 and worked 15 years for them. On my 15th anniversary, I retired from that profession. And now I'm working with Gary Lezak on Weather 2020. It's a long-range forecasting product for agriculture, industry, energy, insurance. And we're using some of Gary's techniques he's been working on for decades on long-range forecasting. And we're doing some interesting stuff. You wouldn't believe how the private sector can find a small niche, and it really can. Unbelievable. Who would have thought that fleas and ticks are a $3 billion business in America?
Yeah.
Think about that.
Well, I'm going to step back for a second and point out what an amazing job you did for NOAA Weather Radio, All Hazards Radio, and for the Midland folks. You did an amazing job, Bruce. You and I are friends. We go way back into Texas back in the day, but I've got to tell you to watch what you do. Or what you did with Midland, and you'll continue to do it now just in a different way, I know. And thank you for what you did, because I think you kept Weather Radio very much out there. And
from a weather service perspective, we can't thank you enough for everything you did with Weather Radio. The only good thing about you not doing it anymore is now we don't get the Bruces confused.
My colleague, Bruce Jones my former colleague, is still doing everything, promoting Weather Radio.
Yeah.
I will tell you, Weather Radio is still the fastest way to get warned in a situation, and it's more reliable than internet and things because it's direct, and it's still a great product. I have no problems telling people I have a Weather Radio in every floor of my home. Yeah, but it's just I was ready for something new. I had done that for 15 years, and now I'm really excited, doing some fun stuff. I got a new haircut because I went down to Texas on a fishing trip. It was 102 degrees. And I went into the barber shop.
Oh, that was a cooler day down there.
That's right. Down there in Troy's country. And
I will tell you, I have a NOAA Weather Radio in the front seat of my Ford Explorer. And for years, I kidded Bruce because it just happened to be in the process of manufacturing this radio. There was never It was meant to be a portable radio. And a lot of years I kind of kidded Bruce. We kind of pushed some of the engineers at the company and so forth. But one day he shows up in Austin and he has put together, Troy, a cigarette plug for that radio. And it's still in my Ford Explorer to this day. And I've always said, you know, how important that was to me, that you didn't have to do that for me, but I just knew that was Bruce Thomas. That's what Bruce did.
That radio is discontinued, and you can buy them at Dollar General now for like $17.95. But it was one of our coolest radios we ever made. It was for the RV industry.
Yeah.
It'll scan and find the weather anywhere in the U.S.
You didn't
and
have
Canada.
to settle channel.
You have to do anything, and it was SAME. Had the ability to program SAME. Once you got your RV to where you're going, you're going to stay a month. You could put SAME in it, and it would do that. But they never made a DC jack plug for it. And Troy was.
I have the only cigarette plug in the truck, and it was made by this.
Well,
your engineer,
our chief engineer was there one day. I said, "This guy in Austin, Texas is
Hey,
bugging the crap out of me. I got to do this." And so he made it for me. He actually shrink wrapped it and made it look perfect.
It's still sitting in my Ford Explorer.
Well, Rick,
no one better touch it.
This proves something right here. You can take Bruce out of weather radio, but you can never take weather radio out of
It was
radio.
great. It was great. And you know what? I want to thank James Spann for everything he did to help promote weather radio. You know, my passion for weather radio goes back to when I was a kid in Mississippi growing up. And when weather radio was one of those things you hear on television, on cable with the radar running over in the middle of the night. And I got the opportunity to broadcast on NOAA Weather Radio at the National Weather Service in Jackson, Mississippi when I was 19 years old. They paid me $3.35 an hour to be there from 11 at night to 7 in the morning doing NOAA Weather Radio. That's back when you had a human voice.
You had a card. You had a card. You raced the cards.
My first dollar I ever made in professional meteorology broadcasting was on NOAA Weather Radio.
Yeah.
So I really had the background and the passion for it that I enjoyed this, and it's still a great product. And Midland was very good to me.
It's a very good company. Very good.
Great.
Did you ever talk today about the future of weather radio?
I did.
Yeah.
What is the future? I missed it. What is the future?
Well, Tyra Brown Harris is working on a group, and Tim Troutman's part of that. And they're going to start subdividing counties around America. All the large counties that are huge counties, the subdivision has been approved for all the National Weather Service offices to start subdividing counties. There's a 0 on the front of all SAME codes. That can be a 1 through 9, and you can sectorize these large counties like Pima County, Arizona, one of the counties out in New Mexico that's actually it's Nevada. The Las Vegas office is going to break up one of these huge counties out there. Not that they get a lot of warnings, but they're going to do an experiment. But it's a patchwork until they can figure out polygons. You know, we all wanted polygons. We begged for it, and it's doable. It's just going to take some time to get it into AWIPS, and no other radio's kind of been buried in AWIPS now. They've gotten rid of they've gotten rid of the cart machines, and they get the console replacement, and they got rid of that. And so weather radio is literally, if you go in a weather service office, it's not there anymore, but it's there. It's inside AWIPS, and they have a headset where they can still go live.
And you don't have to walk across the room to check it. I mean, it's right on everybody's
Rick can address that more than I can, because you use it in Norman, Oklahoma.
Really? But Bruce,
I've gone. It's been a while since we did it. We had huge success with it back in 2003 and a couple of other events. People that perks up their ears when they hear, wait a minute, there's a person on there. You know?
Well, that's no different than 1977 when J.B. Elliott or Jay Shelley would go live on weather radio.
In Austin, Texas, WSO days back before reorganization. Jim Dugan, some of my friends that are still there that were at the Weather Service, actually play-by-play of a tornado warning on weather radio. And you just
for over an hour.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, Bruce. And I know you can't answer for Midland, but you and I've talked about this a little bit. What about GPS in a weather radio? Is that something that, I don't know if that was even discussed today or not here at the meetings?
I don't think they brought it up, but you'll need that to build the smart radio.
Okay.
You need a smart radio to know where it is.
Right.
A GPS chipset's between $5 to $7 now. So to put that in a weather radio, it might increase the cost $15 to $20. But it's all doable now.
Right.
It just has to be done.
Yeah.
The Weather Service has to send out the SAM. It has to send out the lat long codes through the SAE burst so that the radio can pick it up. And we're working, or they are working. I'm not doing it anymore. They are working towards this. And there's a Tiger team in the Weather Service right now working on getting new advancements to NOAA Weather Radio, because they know that it's a great life-saving tool, especially in rural areas where people are in mobile homes, on tribal reservations, places where people are not getting 911 service. There are a lot of things NOAA Weather Radio services extremely well, and tsunamis. It's tremendous. After the earthquake out on the Aleutian Islands, the Kodiak Islands, I went out and did a little pilot project in Grays Harbor, Washington, Aberdeen, Washington, at the Walmart store. We took 100 weather radios there on a snowy day in February. We sold every single radio in 3 hours. And the lady who drove from the Pacific Coast, Pacific City, cried because she was out there and we were sold out. And I sold her my sample. I gave her my sample radio that I brought out there, and she was very pleased. So we sold 101 radios in 3 hours. So NOAA Weather Radio actually is a wonderful tool on the West Coast for tsunami warnings, but no one really knows much about it. No one knows.
And that was mentioned today. I think Bruce Jones actually mentioned, why don't we change the name of it? It's NWR, NOAA Weather Radio, but it's actually a national warning radio, and it's for all kinds of hazards. And we use them for people in Oklahoma. We issue fire warnings, evacuation notices, and those go over weather radio.
California could too.
Incineration program.
Right. We blanketed every county, around 6 counties around that. We put the radios out for that. The Redstone Arsenal, is that right?
And a tsunami depot.
And that one, because they have the chemicals there. And a lot of nuclear plants have to have 3 ways of warning all the people within 10 miles, I believe, of the nuclear plant. So weather radio, sirens, and an app or some kind of a mass notification system through phones. But weather radio is still a viable part of that whole thing.
We actually worked with Bruce before he left. I was out in Guam. Chip Guard is a good friend. Chip is the WCM out in Guam and for the Marianas. And you talk about a unique place. And Bruce actually sent some weather radios. I hand carried them for Midland and for Bruce and both Bruces, and took them out to the Weather Service out there because they're sort of off the grid. They're 15 hours ahead.
Just slightly.
Slightly. But it's not. I think it's the same thing with Alaska. It's just an interesting place. It's not the traditional place that you would expect to see out there. It's typhoons and tsunami. I mean, basically, they don't have tornado warnings. I think they've issued one tornado warning out there before, I think, but that's it. We've got to understand that as part of the warning that not everyone is in the same, it's not tornadoes for everyone, not the biggest hazard.
Right. And I want to thank Troy for doing that, because he came to me and we sent a case of the new WR400s, the latest and greatest weather radios, and he took them over and handed them out to the head person with emergency management in Guam, the Weather Service, as gifts. And he left one at the Hilton Hotel there because they frequently get super typhoons with 180 mile an hour winds.
Have an emergency operations center at the hotel. And so, but it was without Bruce and without the help of Midland that we did that. And I was just glad to be able to transport them and be able to get them out there.
Well, I got to tell you, because of you, Bruce, I carry my NOAA Weather Radio with me to every school talk that I give. And I walk into the front office and I ask the principal, do you have a NOAA Weather Radio? What's my second question?
Does it have batteries? Is it plugged in? Is it programmed?
Have you turned off the alarm because you're tired of hearing it?
Is it out of the box?
Good question. Good
That's
question.
the first question. But you got to ask all those other ones too.
That's very
we got one.
Well, it's a wonderful tool, and thank you guys all so much for what you've done to promote it over the years and all over parts of the country. And it was a great ride at Midland Radio. I had made so many friends, got to be president of the National Weather Association. All these things we've done together over that 15 years, and I'm not gone yet.
Anyone that knows this guy knows that we're going to hear other good things. Bruce, I know we will.
Good friend, Bruce. Thanks for being here.
What a pleasure.
All right. Who wants to go next? Alan or Pat?
Step right up.
Alan Gerard. Alan is the president of the National Weather Association Foundation.
There he goes.
And a former president of the National Weather Association.
Mr. Everything.
On his back.
Yeah. And he didn't have to pay for it.
And he has a day job.
Alan,
you should wear him up here.
Tell us what you're doing now in Norman.
I am now the chief of the Warning Research Division at the National Severe Storms Laboratory.
You miss Jackson?
I miss Jackson, but I love my new job. It's great. I was a meteorologist in charge in the Jackson office for 13 years.
Yeah.
Was in Jackson for nearly 20 years. Saw a lot of big weather events. Katrina, April 27th, 2011. But that really it lit a passion for me. I mean, I already had the passion about warnings and warning the public, but all the events and all the people we saw in Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas that we worked with over the years, really, it kind of lit a passion for me to understand more about warnings, but also to seeing emergency managers do what they do on a daily basis kind of inspired me to go back to school, get a degree in emergency management.
From Millersville, right?
From Millersville, that's right. And so I feel like I'm kind of using all of that expertise now in a position where we're trying to make warnings better.
And to spend time with you, which I did in the test bed about 2 years ago with why you would have myself and Kevin Clazel in the same room. I think it goes against common sense.
We are wondering that.
Exactly.
That will never happen again.
But let me tell you, what they do at the test bed and through the work that you do is amazing. And I remember just sitting there staring in amazement at what's being worked on for the future. Alan is something else.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Rick.
Well, I was just going to mention, you're the second person that's come to the lab in a row from an MIC position. And I think to me, that's an exciting thing to have an operational meteorologist that's just coming from the field in the lab. We talk about operations to research and vice versa. I mean, that has to help everybody, right?
I think it does. Yeah. And I think from talking to a lot of the longtime researchers out there at the lab, they appreciate that. I think that they recognize that there's a lot of advantage to having the operational perspective as part of the lab. And I was a science and operations officer for several years, so I'm familiar with the research side. In fact, we worked in Jackson for several years with NSSL back in the late 90s and early 2000s on some of their what were new at the time, algorithms and visualization for radar and satellite information. So it kind of came full circle.
Well, let's talk about some of those new initiatives that you're directing now.
Yeah. There's a few different things that we're working on, particularly in the division that I'm the head of. One that I talked about today here at the NWA was Facets, which is essentially an initiative. It's kind of a framework to try to accept the fact that the atmosphere is chaotic. It's not completely predictable, and to start going toward more probabilistic approach to forecasting and warning, with the recognition that we need social science to help us understand how to convey that to people. And for some people, they're not going to want probabilities, and they're going to prefer to just get their information the old-fashioned way, with a polygon or whatever. But for some people, one of the things that as a meteorologist in charge, I learned over the years is that everybody has different needs. A hospital that's needing to activate their tornado action plan needs a lot more time to do that than somebody who, like me, who has a storm safe room in their garage and can be in it in 2 minutes. So one of the things that probabilistic information would enable us to do is to be able to provide the people that need different levels of service and different lead times, the ability to have that while still also having that warning, that tornado warning, severe thunderstorm warning that basically is more of a broader societal, it's time for us as a society to act.
Now, you mentioned the term facets. Not everyone may know what that is, so maybe.
It stands for forecasting a continuum of environmental threats. And the reason why we call it that is because it's right now, the way the Weather Service issues like watches and warnings and advisories, they're based on either a time scale, like, the Storm Prediction Center issues a day 1 outlook, a day 2 outlook, a day 3 outlook, or we issue a watch or a warning when certain criteria are met. The idea here with facets is to kind of move away from that approach and just continually update information as new information comes in a probabilistic sense. Some of those products like watches and warnings would continue, but they would have this underlying probabilistic information that people could also use.
So instead of a stair-step approach where you go from the outlook up to a watch, up to a warning, it's
Right.
just a steady slope.
Right. And one of the things that we found from some of the research that, that Troy is talking about, that he's been involved in the hazardous weather test bed, the reason we bring in emergency managers and broadcast meteorologists is to use some of this information so they can give us feedback. And one of the things we've learned as part of that is that one of the really critical time frames that emergency managers in particular really feel like there's a need for more of that continuous information is in the time frame between when SPC issues a watch and when a WFO issues a warning. Yes, mobile homes is a huge issue because a lot of communities are really going toward putting in community shelters, but you don't want people aren't going to sit in a community shelter for 6 to 8 hours while a watch is in effect. So we have to have actionable information to provide folks that say in the next 2 to 3 hours, the risk is really going to ramp up, and figure out how to best convey that to people. And one of the other groups at the lab is working on the Warn on Forecast system, which is essentially a modeling system to help provide us information in that kind of in-between time frame.
There was some really, I thought, exciting information that Russ Schneider was presenting today. He's director of the Storm Prediction Center, talking about the evolution of this threat in a time sense.
Right.
Fantastic.
Yes. Yeah, and that's really what one of the things, and I certainly got this, and I'm sure Rick gets it. I'm sure James, John, you all, in meteorology, is people want to know, when is it going to happen?
Yeah.
And one of the things that we can do with this probabilistic hazard information by having it like from, if you just have it as a continuous from say 7 days before the event to 5 minutes before the event, is that somebody could really look at that and see, okay, how is the risk evolving in time? When is it going to peak out for me? And that was one of the things that Russ was showing today, using the Columbus, Mississippi tornado from February as an example, showing how the research to operations that SPC is working on with the lab are enabling them to take the outlook that the forecasters, provide, make with their own expertise, but then kind of combine that with high resolution model data to add timing and probability information over that, so that, theoretically at some point somebody could have an app or a web page where they click on a point and it would show them, this is how the tornado risk is going to evolve today.
So this is exciting.
That could be fairly soon. I believe SPC is planning on starting to put some of that information on their website as an experimental product within the next year to 18 months. So that part may not be too far away.
It's exciting.
It really is exciting. It is. I was involved in a damage survey a couple of years ago in a mobile home community. And fortunately, there were no fatalities, but there were some injuries in that mobile home community. And I remember one of the injured coming up to me and asking me, what do I do and where do I go and when do I act? I can't sit in a mobile in a shelter for 6 hours. Right. How do I know when to make that decision? Well, now you're addressing that.
Right. And part of this is the fastest thing, but part of this is also lessons we're learning from Vortex Southeast, which I don't know if you all have talked about tonight, but Vortex Southeast is another project that we're involved in that I've inherited the federal leadership of for the lab, that is essentially a congressionally mandated project to really study the tornado problem in the Southeast, not just the physical science aspect, but the societal aspect of it as well. And obviously, as someone that was in Mississippi for 20 years, I recognize there are a lot of socioeconomic factors in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee that, like you're talking about, John. And I one of the examples that always sticks with me is we had a tornado event in December. This has been years ago, and we happened upon, as we were doing the damage survey, tornado, a mobile home that had just been obliterated, and I was like, I can't believe people survived this, like the people came back, while we were there. And I said, and they said, oh, well, we heard that there was a warning in like the next county. So we decided it was a good time to go to Walmart and do our shopping for the week.
Yeah.
And when we came back, this is what we found.
But Alan,
but that's the kind of thing where that person just kind of happenstance on that. We want to, part of Vortex Southeast is to try to reduce the impact of tornadoes in the Southeast U.S. And we want to make the ability for people to do that on a routine basis.
And Alan, for the people that are watching and listening to us, tornadoes in Kansas and Oklahoma, for the most part, are different creatures in a way than the tornadoes in North Alabama, North Mississippi, and Western Tennessee, where we tend to have more fatalities, tends to be more at night. You don't expect to see the tornado like you do in Oklahoma and Kansas, where you can see 30 miles. You have a lot more obstacles, lower ceilings, lower cloud heights. It's a different, and that's one thing that I think has been very good about the fact we've come to Vortex South.
Yeah, and there are certainly physical things that we're exploring. The Southeast tends to get tornadoes, basically 12 months out of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you're talking from hurricanes in the summer to, fall and winter outbreaks to more of your typical spring severe weather. So definitely the nocturnal issue, the tornadoes at night is a big issue. Yeah. It's a lot harder to get people to react at 3 a.m. I can't tell you how many people when I was in Mississippi who would tell me that they just basically, on nights when there was a tornado watch, they would just stay up all night because they just
had to.
Yeah, I mean that was really their only option. They live out in a rural area. There's no sirens. That was why we pushed weather radio so hard, was to try to give those people.
I always remember the guy to my left here, Rick, was one time asked, when was the tornado season in Oklahoma? And I think your response was January 1st to December 31st. Approximately, approximately that's the tornado season. Yeah. But it's true, and especially in parts of the South and over the Southern Plains. Sure. Any month of the year.
Yeah. It is. And I'm sure Rick and the folks in Norman, they get some of the, I keep thinking of the El Reno tornado, the most recent El Reno tornado.
El Reno 3 or 4.
Yes. QLCS, that's, we get a lot, in the Southeast, you get a lot of QLCS tornadoes. You get a lot of tornadoes at night. And those are the kind of problems that we're trying to learn from. But for those kind of applications, they'll hopefully apply to those type of events in Oklahoma, just like people in the Southeast benefited from the original Vortex research.
Because all of our storms are not the big shooting fish in a barrel supercells.
And for those of us in the Northeast, where we don't experience a lot of tornadoes, we did get nocturnal tornadoes in May. And QLCS issues are a big problem for us.
Yeah.
Welcome to our world.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for playing.
Thank you, Alan. We appreciate it. Yeah.
Put a plug in for the foundation.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you. I'm the president of the National Weather Association Foundation, and we're essentially the education arm of the NWA. We raise money to try to get scholarships out to deserving students who want to pursue a career in meteorology, and just as importantly, to teachers who want to do a better job of educating their students about meteorology and weather. So we're on the web at nwafoundation.org. We appreciate everyone's support. We appreciate that guy there, Bill Murray's support. He runs Weather Ready Fest for us every year, raises a lot of money for the foundation, and we got a great group here.
Excellent. Thank you, Alan.
Good to see you. That you can bring the house down tonight.
There you go.
Here it is, Pat. Yeah,
Close
we're
it out.
If you can squeeze Barb.
Oh, absolutely.
She's
She's okay. Yeah, she's across the room.
Yeah, she gets squeezed out of the first segment.
So let me welcome in Pat Spoden. Pat, you are in Paducah, Kentucky.
You're thinking it.
I had to think, you know where I was going, right?
Somewhere in Kentucky.
Yes.
Paducah,
Yeah.
Kentucky.
PAH.
Yeah, PAH.
When did you move there and how?
Gosh, 1994. So back in the 1900s. That's when I started.
So you're the original. You're the original Sue.
I am there, not the original Sue. That was
In the
But-
next
yeah. But Paducah, they have not thrown me out yet, so it's a good thing.
It should be.
Yeah, I hope not.
You are doing something right there.
I guess apparently so. So, but enjoy it. It's a wonderful part of the United States. If you like humidity, it's it's a lot like the East Coast, except when the humidity comes in the end of May, it stays until September. It doesn't leave. And you guys were talking QLCSs. That's what we fight. We get the supercells every now and then. We'll get the big, days, but more than likely we're fighting those QLCS
We're
tornadoes.
dealing with some flash flooding issues in the last few months, I believe.
Yeah, we've had a little bit of rain. We figured out that the past 12 months have all been above normal in rainfall. We're thinking September might break that, but it's early. It's not there. So, yeah, we had points in flood, Cairo, Illinois, for example, and around Cape Girardeau that were in flood record lengths of time this year. So essentially from last December, except for like 2 days through about July, it was under a flood rate every day.
I bet when people think of weather service offices that are busy, you think of Birmingham, you think of Norman. A lot of people don't think about Paducah, but you guys have parts of 4 states, over 50 counties, and every kind of weather you can imagine.
Winter storms.
Winter storms, ice storms.
Winter storms are almost always a mix. You might have freezing rain in one area, sleet, snow going on somewhere else. So it's pretty rare that it's just all snow.
You get the remnants of tropical systems as well.
Oh yeah. One of the most famous ones was Ike.
Right.
I came through the Houston area, did a lot overnight and moved through Arkansas. Very quiet. Never had a wind gust above 35 miles an hour that night. And then at 5 a.m., Poplar Bluff, Missouri, gust of 45, 55, 60, 65, 70. And this moved across the Ohio River Valley. And we had probably 2 to 3 hours of sustained 60-mile-an-hour winds with gusts to 80.
Wow.
We had it was Sunday morning. And I remember my wife came up and said, something is happening. You need to get up. I said, okay, get up. Oh, wow, this is pretty impressive. And neighbor was out trying to cut down a tree limb that had fallen, and they eventually just gave up and went inside, did the smart thing. But that was probably the most impressive thing. And then I learned later that as they moved up into Ohio, it was actually sunny in the afternoon when that circulation moved through. And they said under pretty much sunny skies, they had winds of 60 to 70 miles an hour.
Oh, gosh.
So,
Isn't Mother Nature amazing? Yeah.
just when you think
You
you got to figure it out.
Yeah.
Dude,
I don't recall seeing that chapter in the
No, I've always,
didn't you write that?
yeah, exactly. I've always said, just use the word never, and you'll see. And so,
Yeah, you never use never.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it's been a hectic and busy year, but that's anymore. You can go back into the early 2000s. They were big tornadic years for us, big severe thunderstorm years, and sometimes it's there and it's one thing or it's another.
Right.
Where we're at. So it's pretty busy time. But people come, they stay. We haven't, I think, hired a new forecaster in probably close to 2 decades.
Really? Really? But really?
Do they know they can leave?
Okay. There's 3 people there. But
no one can
we've
leave.
hired anyone. So.
No, we're you're making it through, and it's not too bad. And we're looking to bring out more people, so things are looking good. And, everyone is, like you would say, at any office across the country, the most dedicated people. ever seen or worked with in your life. You know, you get that call and you put your pants on at 2 a.m. to go in. And you're like, why am I doing this job? And then then you walk in the office. There's 4 other people there. And you go, okay, now I know I'm here, and you put it on.
And for those people that weren't here today, Pat, go back to the office and tell them that we appreciate what they do.
I will absolutely.
From that service standpoint, to the men and women of the Weather Service, to broadcasters, to the people that support us, we appreciate what you do every day.
Well, we appreciate, the whole weather community. You know, we all have to work together. We're all after the same thing.
Yep.
And that's the whole idea is, can we work together? You know, I learned a lot of stuff, watching you and the different things that you've been involved in. And, one of the masters over there. You get on the wall. Yeah. The guy's pointing at me.
Exactly. Pat, he was pointing. We put it directly toward that chair.
I feel that. I feel the gaze.
It's a little scary.
With you when you leave.
They'll be glad to sign it for you.
Wow. That's inclusive. Okay.
Oh, goodness.
Anyway.
Well, great. Thanks for stopping
Well,
by.
thank you all. Thank you all for what you do.
Thank you.
Come on up here.
Pat Foden from the Hotel California.
Oh, the cavalcade of guests here.
Now we have a new friend.
Yeah.
We're so sorry. We've been waiting for
It's
Poor
okay.
Barb.
It's okay.
She got called back in the meetings. Yeah.
whatever it is.
It was John.
There were very pressing things to discuss today.
And you've got a lot going on. There's a lot of people can't see it, but there's a whole bunch of stuff going on.
There's a lot of stuff in the back.
There were some fairly pressing conversations going on out there too.
Good.
Barb, introduce yourself. I don't even know who you are. I apologize.
That's
This
okay.
is Barb's first NWA.
It is my first NWA.
I didn't realize it.
My name is Barb Mays-Bousted, and I'm with the National Weather Service's Morning Decision Training Division. I've been on the Weather Service for, I think I'm getting on to 18 years now.
Then my apologies.
Well, I'm here with my team.
And your background previously in the Weather Service, 4 years morning training at the training ground?
Prior to being there, I spent 13 years in the field. I spent a few years at our headquarters in our climate program.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, I've got my PhD in applied climatology as well. So, and I researched Laura Ingalls Wilder and weather on the side. So I have a whole bunch of.
We've already booked her for an October date on Weatherbrains.
So here I was focusing quite a bit on what I do a lot in my training in the Morning Decision Training Division, which is the human behind the morning decision. We're focusing more, we're understanding better, and Rick can attest to this, that there is a lot that goes on that affects that cognitive ability, that ability to think through the morning process. It can be emotional factors and psychological factors, and even physical factors. We've been talking about our staff who are so dedicated to their jobs. They're so dedicated that they come in for their shift and see storms on the scope. They sit down, they grab a pop, they grab a snack from the snack fund, and then they're there for 4 or 5, 6 hours.
Yeah.
We're trying to help them realize that it's okay to get a drink. It's okay to get a better choice of food. It's okay to get up and pee. Can I say that on here?
Yeah.
Okay.
No problem, Barb. No.
Usually,
All right.
those are comments for the first 10 minutes.
We want our forecasters to know that they have to take care of themselves. Not just that they can or they should, but they're serving their mission and they're serving their public to do that.
Yeah, taking care of themselves.
And if there's ever a better time to talk about self-care, it's today.
Absolutely.
It's important right now as we're trying to come together as an agency behind our message together that we are taking care of each other and taking care of ourselves. And we're looking after each other, checking in on our fellow employees to say, hey, are you doing all right? Do you need a break? Should we take a walk? Take a couple minutes and go do what you need to do so that you can collect your thoughts and focus.
What's the biggest distraction for somebody working with forecast guys that's got their finger on the button?
Twitter.
Oh, there are a number.
I was gonna say the media, but
I can name you probably 5 of them off the top, and that is social media, the potential of what will people say if I do or don't issue this warning. There's the text you might be getting in your phone that you can't check because you're busy, but it's your family and they're trying to figure out what they should do. Your friends want to know if it's coming to them. So we live in the communities that we work in. So when storms are affecting our communities, they're affecting us too, and our people we care about and the places we care about. And I think that's a big distraction for us.
Big question here. So we wonder this in the TV business. we have the finals of Dancing with a Star on television.
Yeah.
And you know, if we cut that thing off for an hour, we will be inundated with pure hate, anger, rage, vitriol. Do you even think about that? Is there any, do you even know it's on television in prime time when you're sitting at the desk at the Weather Service? We always wonder that.
Well, my question is to you. No, you said that before. I don't care. No, I know you don't care, but no, I think
I don't care.
but that's a great question.
Absolutely. You know, we have situation awareness displays.
Yeah,
It's basically every channel we can display. We're very aware of what could be interrupted. Do we care? No, because we're going to issue the warning we need to issue.
Yeah.
I worked at the Omaha Forecast Office for 10 years. We issued warnings during Nebraska Cornhusker football games,
Lord,
which becomes unpopular.
the humanity.
An understatement.
But you know when it's on, and you know that,
Yes.
okay, it's the NBA Finals, it's the last minute. Boy, we're about to make some people mad here. But you have to.
I mean, we're going to do what we're going to do, and it's regardless of what's on TV. Now, we might send someone into the chat room as we're drawing up that warning to say,
That would be smart.
we are looking at the storm so that you all can gear up on the media side and brace yourselves too for what's going to come.
Yeah.
We're lucky though that we don't face that
It's
kind of backlash. It doesn't
direct.
usually come in
It's not.
directed to us. We're aware of it, but we don't.
It gets a
Quite
James Spann email. Yeah.
We'll take the bullets for it.
You know, I have to selfishly talk about something we've been involved in together, put a plug in for what we're going to be doing tomorrow. This concept of health and wellness and the weather service and the weather enterprise, not just the weather service, is really a new topic. We haven't, geeky, introverted meteorologists who got the job to look at computer screens all day, the last thing they want to do is talk about their thoughts and feelings and past issues around, and, which was kind of going on in here a little bit today, but that's starting to come out more. So Barb and I are part of I'm excited about this panel tomorrow, talking about all aspects of health and wellness, mental, emotional health. James, you hit on it several times when you've spoken here the past couple of days about the impacts on us as meteorologists and forecasters, not physically, cognitively, emotionally, mentally. You've actually produced some training for the Weather Service on some of this. And talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing tomorrow.
Right. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing a panel that takes the human behind the process. And we look at that from during the warning event or during the high impact weather event through the follow-up and the impacts that can occur days, weeks, months, and years later. And like Rick, I'm thrilled to be on this panel. We have someone from the private sector. We have another trainer within the Weather Service who joins us, Christina Crow. And we also have a psychologist joining us, an actual professional who can help us understand and better address these issues. Because like Rick said, there are all these layers of things that affect our cognition, and every layer of something that gets in our brain is in the way of us making a quick and accurate decision. So the more we can get through that and unpack it and understand it, the better we can move past it and make our decisions more effectively.
And one thing too, Barb, is being involved a little bit on the emergency management side myself. This is something we've seen in law enforcement, that in years gone by, you would see law enforcement people you'd have traumatic events and you need some help? No, I'm tough. I don't need any help.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing more and more. I am close enough at the University of Texas with law enforcement where they're welcoming the help now. And I'm hoping that that Weather Service folks and the weather community can also realize that you can, this stuff can kill you if you don't take care of yourself.
Literally, it could. And we're getting better in the Weather Service about doing things like bringing in an expert after a big event in the office to help them talk through it and be available. And as Rick alluded, we're developing training, just the initial stages of it's okay to take care of yourself. Because in our culture, we have such a mission-driven workforce that they feel so obligated to their public, to their partners, and to their coworkers to stay where they are and tough it out. That we're trying to remind them there's no cowboy and cowgirl award. The most important thing is for you to be a healthy person making that decision, and that's your physical and mental health too. And we want people to take care of themselves and take care of each other so that they can better serve.
Yeah.
But it is a challenge for us because you talked about law enforcement. We know about PTSD for the military and the firefighters and EMS. People in the Weather Service or broadcast media or whoever, they're like, I can't feel that. I'm not out there rescuing people or dealing with horrible things on the scene.
Yes,
but,
you are.
But we are.
Yeah,
I mean,
you
it's called
are,
vicarious trauma.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're dealing with it a whole different way. We've talked to mental health experts, and they're like, it's kind of a unique situation because we're living the event days and days and days before it. And it does not matter. May 20th, we had a high risk.
Yeah.
And that was the most intense, stressful period I've had in a long time.
Yeah.
Not much happened. That doesn't matter. You still went through that intense stress. And so it's hard.
I think what's changed in my career, the days leading up to an event. It used to be the day of the event itself.
Yeah.
But now, in that you're constantly on social media, digital platforms, round the clock, answering questions. It is stressful. And by the time you get to the day of the event, I don't know about you, I am drained.
Yeah.
I am emotionally exhausted, and I feel like I have nothing left, and that's not good.
Well, there's that cumulative stress.
Yeah.
That cumulative stress factor, and that doesn't even get to what potential aftermath you might have to deal with. And again, Rick alluded, this is why Rick and I work together on these things. So we're on the same page a lot, but Rick alluded to this thought of, well, I wasn't the one who issued the warning. How can I feel this trauma? Or, well, I only issued one warning on an EF5. This office has done a dozen. I didn't go survey that damage firsthand. I just saw the pictures. It's almost, you've all heard of imposter syndrome. It's like trauma imposter syndrome. People feel like their trauma isn't good enough to justify the feelings they have, when it very much is.
I feel that I was talking, Christina Crow worked in the Huntsville office during the April 27th, 2011. And as we're talking about this, I'm thinking, I've never had that many people die in a tornado. I've never had that. She has the right to feel that way. I don't, but that's not true. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a tornado. It doesn't have to be a huge hurricane. It could be 15 little freezing drizzle event. I mean, it could be anything, and it's personal.
It's whatever gets to you. Yeah. I mean, that's an individual thing for every person who's dealing with this. And for some people, it will never be that big of a problem. For some people, it's going to change their lives and make things incredibly difficult. We all have different physical and psychological makeups that affect the way we go through this decision-making process. And it doesn't make us better, worse, weaker, or stronger. It just makes us human. So back to that human kind of decision.
This has been an eye-opening discussion for me. All of us have had those events that I would call life events from a weather perspective. And I didn't, this goes back 20 years for me, but I covered the May 3rd, 99 outbreak for the Weather Channel live. I was the guy doing it.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize why I had nightmares after that for days. I couldn't sleep for days after that. Now you're explaining it to me.
We had, lost my train of thought. Go for it.
Well, and this does affect everybody. You mentioned it's not just the person issuing the warning. It could be an electronics technician in a National Weather Service office. It could be the person operating the camera. We've actually had journalists who have actually had to retire from the business in Oklahoma City because of things they've had to see and encounter covering storms. It could be somebody at the national media. I mean,
I've seen actually students that were chasing storms that encountered situations in the wake, particularly of the Moore tornado a number of years ago, that you had to push to go get help. You need help. You went from a tornado chaser and a scientific tornado, someone who knows the science, into seeing people that are dead there in front of you. And
you do have to push. I mean, we are not, like Barb's been saying, we're going to sit there. I'll sit there for 18 hours if I have to until I just can't hold my eyes open anymore. And you realize, oh my God, the last time I ate was at 7 o'clock this morning. And so we're not the kind of people, none of us are, to say I need help or this doesn't feel right. But that's what all of this is about. We're very much in the diagnosis phase of this in the weather enterprise and making it okay to talk about it.
If you sit down 100 meteorologists in a room and ask them to tell the one that got to them, you're going to get 100 stories of an event that got
just thinking around this table.
Which is how, now that we do entry-level meteorologist training from the Warning Decision Training Division. It's our training to them on how to become ready to issue warnings. And we're increasing that profile of the human behind it. So I get those students, along with my partner in crime, Justin Gibbs, in the Warning Decision Training Division. We get them first off on Monday morning in the workshop. And I've started now to tell them the one that got to me, which I have told that story a dozen times now to a dozen different classes. And I still get choked up when I tell that story. And I don't think that'll ever go away. But that's okay, because they see that and they see the genuine impact that that's going to have on me for the rest of my life. My one that got away was the Boy Scout tornado, Little Sioux,
Yep.
Iowa.
Yep.
That's the one that's going to always affect
And
me.
Barb, this self-care for me is coming from the top headquarters of the Weather Service. The support is there from the highest levels in the Weather Service for the employees.
Our support is there. Our understanding of what to do is not fully there. We're just learning. This is a very new field. And we want those who have expertise in this to engage with us, with our group, with Rick and Christina and I, to understand how we can take care of ourselves during the event and how we can take care of ourselves after the event.
And we're taking a lot of lessons from the fire service. I mean, if you talk to incident meteorologists who go to fires, they've been dealing with this for a long time, and they have special training. They do debriefing. And one of the things that we're looking to implement in the Weather Service that Christina Crow's been working on is a peer support group where we get people throughout the Weather Service across the country that have some special training. And just like we did informally with Birmingham, I can call Kevin Laws up, or I can call whoever up and say, hey, how's it going over there? You know, it's something as simple as that. And one other person we can't forget to mention is Becky DePodwin. She is a huge part of this, and she works for AccuWeather. She's actually getting an award Wednesday. She's getting a special award for her work with mental health. She has been instrumental in opening the conversation on this part. She's going to be moderating the panel, and she's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, Becky was on this show not that long ago.
Thank you, Barb.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So nice to meet you.
Yeah.
To meet all of you. Thanks for talking to me.
And we'll talk to you in October.
All right.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Bob.
you.
So we're running a little late here. It's going to be we were almost 2 hours here, but it was a
Wow.
good 2 hours.
Yeah,
It flew by. But,
And what a
again,
great job we did over here to the right with the guest mic. You know?
See, we got a pro.
Not
here.
only the hair of an angel,
The
Yeah,
hair of an
no.
angel, great
the interviewing skill of an angel.
Wait, is that like
Okay.
Yeah. He forgot to turn it on.
Oh, yeah.
So
Hey,
again,
this is big time television,
yeah,
folks.
so we will be back in our regular cubby holes next week.
Yeah.
And Rick, please come back more often. Okay,
Oh, I
you.
would love to.
This
Awesome. I miss it.
Weatherbrains is like the Hotel California. You can check out, but you can never leave. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to take a quick break for Tony Rice and the astronomy report. We're going to come back and wrap it up right after this. So JP, this is the edit point for. This is a drop-in edit. I'm not going to roll it live.
We don't get to go to the restroom during this.
No.
No. So here we come back in
Well,
5,
thanks
4,
very much.
3, 2, 1. Tony, thank you. And again, we'll do away with the email, picks of the week, the regular stuff. We'll do that next week.
Yeah.
But again, thanks to everybody for watching. I know it's been a little bit of a long show, but an important show. Rick, great to have you back.
It's great to be here, and depending on when you're listening to this, please follow along on Twitter. Amazing job of the social media committee here, live tweeting pictures of the slides, and you'll know what's going on. And Tuesday morning, there's going to be an exciting talk here first thing, so you're going to want to turn into that. It will be streamed live, I'm sure. So NWAS19 is the hashtag to follow.
I'm going to also say something for the guys that are here. First of all, I didn't understand, Dr. John, I've known James Spann for a lot of years, but to watch him and Bill set all this stuff up.
It's
He's
all
also an
James.
engineer.
All I
He's a
did was
television-
roll the cart.
Yeah. Well, I saw you.
It
You
really
rolled the
is.
cart very well.
That's my
And so-
hotel experience.
I
there.
understand that, but I'm sitting here and I'm
This
just
is an
amazed
impressive
by
set.
James Spann and,
And Ryan.
engineering
I'll shout out Ryan, our son. He gave us half his equipment to make this
And
happen here.
JP for everything amazing.
JP edit. So we got to get out of here. On behalf of the entire Weatherbrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great week and God bless. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Let's turn off the live stream. Thank you all for watching live. We are now wrapping up the live